Hi YouTube, welcome back to my channel. If you're new around here, my name is Alessia and I make videos related to writing, lifestyle, and true crime. And today we're actually doing another true crime episode, and this one is an oldie but a goodie, and it is the case of Leopold and Loeb. So if you're interested, then please keep watching. So it's a bit confusing because Leopold and Loeb both sound really similar to me and I get the two last names really confused. So I'm just going to refer to them as Nathan and Richard. So Nathan Leopold was born on November 18th, 1904 to wealthy Jewish parents in the south side of Chicago. He grew up in the suburb of Kenwood, which is basically just a wealthy area where a lot of Jewish immigrant families settled. Now, Nathan was a brilliant student. He was actually described as a child prodigy, and he actually went to the University of Chicago at age 15. So Nathan actually studied 15 languages, and once he was done his undergrad at the University of Chicago, he was planning to study at the Harvard Law School. So this guy was very smart, and he knew it too. He definitely had a huge ego. So Richard Loeb was born on June 11th, 1905 to Jewish parents. Just like Nathan, he also grew up in the wealthy suburb of Kenwood. And the two boys knew of each other throughout their childhood, but they weren't really friends until their university days. So like Nathan, Richard was extremely intelligent, and he was actually the youngest graduate ever from the University of Michigan, graduating at only 15 years old. After graduating from the University of Michigan, Richard then transferred to the University of Chicago to study history, and that's where he rekindled his friendship with Nathan Leopold. And the two boys were outcasts. They were both very intelligent and both a lot younger than the other university students, so they were kind of drawn to each other, and they soon started a sexual relationship. And the two boys weren't just lovers, they actually had a lot of similar interests, and both of them were very interested in the area of crime. So like I said, Nathan had a huge ego, and in particular, he was pretty obsessed with the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. And Nathan read all of Nietzsche's work, but in particular, he was really drawn to the philosophy of supermen. So the philosophy of supermen is the idea that there are these human beings that have really unusual and superior capabilities and intelligence. So these supermen were intellectually superior to the average person, and because of their intellectual capabilities, this made them extremely important to society. This importance and intellectual capabilities made supermen above the rules of society, so above law, ethics, morals, and just regulations. And of course, Nathan believed that he and Richard were supermen. And because Richard and Nathan were supermen, they were not liable for anything they did, and the law basically just did not apply to them. They were above the law. So since the pair believed they were above the law, they started to commit petty crimes to test this theory. So Nathan and Richard began committing small crimes like theft, vandalism, and arson together. And surprisingly, they were not caught for these crimes, and this reinforced their idea that they were supermen and that they were above the law. And this in turn almost motivated them to go even bigger with their crimes. So in the year 1924, Nathan and Richard wanted to go big or go home. So they decided to plan the perfect crime. And in their minds, they were planning for the perfect murder. To them, this murder almost seemed like an intellectual challenge, a thrill that, would rouse their very curious minds. So the boys planned out every single little detail of the perfect murder. They planned out their ideal victim. They decided that they wanted to include a ransom note. They decided where to dispose of the body and how to dispose of the body, as well as methods to keep the authorities off their trail. So Richard actually suggested to Nathan that they should kidnap a child, and Nathan agreed. The boys also decided that they would type out a ransom note of $10,000 and send it to their victim's family as a sort of test, or, just a little added extra bonus to their murder. And once they had all of the details worked out, all they needed really was a victim. And that was the next step. On May 21st, 1924, the boys rented a car and drove around their suburb of Kenwood looking for a victim. And after driving around for a bit, they saw Richard's 14-year-old cousin, Bobby Franks. And Bobby was just innocently walking home, and he actually was almost at his house. And the two boys decided that Bobby would be their perfect victim. And because Richard was Bobby's cousin, Richard knew that Bobby belonged to a very wealthy family and that his father and mother would be able to pay the $10,000 ransom. So the boys lured Bobby into the car, and it wasn't that hard because Richard was his cousin, which honestly is disgusting. But of course Bobby suspected nothing, and he got into the car with his cousin Richard and his friend Nathan. So once the boys had Bobby in the car, Richard quickly overpowered the boy and delivered a series of blows to Bobby's head with a chisel, and this sadly killed him. So once Bobby was dead, the boys drove their car to a predetermined location, which was a nearby lake, and dumped Bobby's body in the water. So the boys were very methodical and very meticulous with hiding Bobby. Like I said, they had planned this out earlier. So they actually stripped Bobby of his clothing and they poured hydrochloric acid on his face and his genitals to mask his identity from the authorities. And once they were done disposing the body, the two boys drove home and spent the rest of the evening playing cards. So it didn't take long for the suburb of Kenwood to notice that Bobby was missing, and the boys were working on their ransom note. So they actually mailed it to the Franks household, and a few days later, Nathan called Bobby's mother asking for the $10,000 ransom. And luckily for Bobby's family, the ransom was quickly abandoned once the police found the body of 14-year-old Bobby Franks. So the Chicago police quickly launched an intensive investigation into the death of Bobby. This boy was young, he was wealthy, he came from a very affluent family, and he died in a terrible manner, and it really shocked the community of Southside Chicago. And Nathan, the guy with the huge ego, actually had the nerve to insert himself into the investigation and would go around talking about his theories of what happened to Bobby. And it didn't take long for the police to recover some pretty important evidence from the scene of the crime. The police actually found a unique pair of eyeglasses that were lying near Bobby's body, and only 3 people in all of Chicago owned these glasses because they were very unique. And of course, one of these people was Nathan Leopold. The police also later uncovered a burnt typewriter that the boys had used to type and mail the ransom note. So, of course, they are starting to look pretty suspicious, and the police decide to bring Nathan and Richard in for questioning. And Richard and Nathan are so calm and smug about this, and they actually provide an alibi for the night of Bobby's death. And the boys actually said that on the night of Bobby's murder, they were driving around in Nathan's car and just picking up women, like off the side of the street. They were just driving around and picking up women. And thankfully, this was exposed as a lie when Nathan's chauffeur came forward and told the police that he was actually repairing Nathan's car on the night that Bobby was murdered, so Nathan couldn't have been driving it. Realizing that they were backed into a very small corner, the boys finally confessed. And Richard actually confessed first, blaming this whole plan on Nathan. And then Nathan confessed and blamed this whole plan on Richard. So the two boys quickly were pitted against each other and pretty much just blamed the other person for everything. And it is hard to pinpoint who exactly killed Bobby and who really executed this plan, but it is widely believed that Richard Loeb was the one who killed Bobby and was the one to suggest a child victim. So the boys' trial became a huge spectacle, and the media flocked the courtrooms, and this was actually known as the trial of the century. These boys were the perfect example of privilege. They were white, they lived in a very wealthy neighborhood, they were very intelligent, they pretty much had everything in life handed to them on a silver platter, and the public just couldn't understand how these two boys who had everything in life would just randomly decide to go and murder a 14-year-old boy for intellectual purposes. And Richard Loeb's family was extremely wealthy, as I mentioned, and his father was worth $10 million in 1924. So I can't even imagine what he would be worth today. But this man had enough money to hire the best defense lawyer in the country. So Richard's family hired defense lawyer Clarence Darrow, and he was paid an equivalent of $1 million for his time. So at first, it was assumed that Darrow would enter a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity. But he quickly changed his mind after a series of psychiatrists and psychologists both interviewed and studied Richard and Nathan and found nothing wrong with either of them. These boys were perfectly sane, perfectly healthy, and were fit to stand trial. So because the boys were declared sane, Darrow had to change his tactic, and he decided to enter a plea of guilty. And he decided to pretty much try and persuade the judge to give the boys life imprisonment instead of capital murder. So a lot was on the line for Richard and Nathan, and they easily could lose their lives. And it should be noted that the boys were pretty much emotionless during the trial, but they were seen laughing and smiling to each other, and they clearly had no idea what was going on or the gravity of the situation that they had placed themselves in. So Clarence Darrow was actually a really great lawyer, and during the trial he made an incredibly famous speech.
They had come to hear Clarence Darrow's closing argument, rumored to be the last the legendary attorney would give before his retirement.
So during the speech, Darrow tried to humanize the boys by saying they endured a really hard childhood that was riddled with absent parenting, and also talked about how Richard Loeb endured sexual assault by his governess. And there's actually a really great documentary about this case, and I will insert a little clip of Darrow's speech if I can find it.
Your Honor, I have stood here for 3 months, as one might stand at the ocean, trying to sweep back the tide. I hope the seas are subsiding and the wind is falling, and I believe they are. But I wish to make no false pretense to this court. The easy thing, and the popular thing to do, is to hang my clients. We are asking this court to save their lives.
So the trial ran for 32 days, which is quite a long time, and in the end, the judge was actually quite persuaded by Darrow's speech.
You realize that he was very smoothly, seductively creating a mood, casting a spell, touching their emotions, quite masterfully.
Before I would tie a noose around the neck of a boy, I would try to call back into my mind the emotions of youth. The brain of the child is the home of dreams, of castles, of visions, of illusions and delusions. And whether they take one shape or another shape depends not on the dreamy boy, but on what surrounds him.
Again and again, Darrow spoke of youth, reminding Judge Caverly that Nathan Leopold and Richard Loeb, at 19, were but children.
And he handed the boys each a life sentence plus 99 years for kidnapping. And this was probably the best possible sentence for Bobby's family, and it was a really good outcome for all of the people that these boys hurt. So there's quite a bit of aftermath to this case, which I'll quickly talk about. If you're not interested in hearing what happens to them after they go to prison, then feel free to click off here. So Richard and Nathan were sent to the same prison where they actually remained friends and helped expand the prison's school system. On January 28, 1936, Richard Loeb was actually attacked by a fellow inmate in the shower room, and he was stabbed with a razor over 50 times, and he later died in the hospital due to his injuries. And being gay, or just being anything other than a cis heterosexual in prison, can be really difficult and really dangerous, and this is the fate that befell Richard Loeb. So Nathan Leopold, on the other hand, became a model prisoner, and he spent his time volunteering, teaching other fellow inmates, and reforming the education system in the prison to include high school diplomas as well as college and university degrees. So Nathan went on to write a book in prison called Life Plus 99 Years, and this book was written to persuade a judge to give him parole. And it actually worked. Nathan was released in 1958 after 33 years in prison. And Nathan went on to live a relatively normal life after that. He actually moved to Puerto Rico, where he worked as a lab technician and later taught at the University of Puerto Rico after getting a degree in social work. And Nathan died in 1971 from a heart attack relating to diabetes, and he really didn't spend that much time outside of prison. He had a relatively short life, which, you know, is a fitting end in my opinion. So the Leopold and Loeb case continues to shock the entire world, and it went on to inspire countless works of fiction, theater, and movies. One of the most popular movies that was based on this case is called Rope by Alfred Hitchcock, and the movie Compulsion. So Richard and Nathan definitely got a lot of media attention throughout their life and still get media attention even after their deaths. But I think it's really important to remember the true victim of this case, and that is Bobby Franks. He was only 14 years old and he had so much life to live, and his life was just taken away just by two egotistical older boys who were just looking for something fun and interesting to do. And I think that is really sad. So that is everything for this case. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I will link the documentary below in the description box if you're interested. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel if you aren't already, and I'll see you guys next Monday for a brand new video. Bye guys.